Welcome to the Crumps Barn Studio podcast. My name is Lorna Brookes. I'm the main editor at Crumps Barn Studio, and today's guest is Sue Andrews. Sue Andrews is a sheep farmer in the Cotswolds. She's also a journalist, and she's also published 3 memoirs about life on her farm. Her most recent instalment is Sheep for All Seasons. Sue's joining me today to talk about the background behind her series, how she came to write about life on her farm, and some of the new developments, which include a sheepdog puppy. So welcome, Sue. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, and thank you everybody who's tuned in. That's brilliant. What can I tell you about us? My husband Aubrey and I first started sheep farming when we got married, really. We moved to a farm where he was shepherd, and at the same time, a relation, having realised that we got a little paddock at the end of our cottage, suddenly made us the gift of a black Welsh mountain ram, Satan. He got this wonderful set of horns. He had the appearance of a devil, I must say. And he joined us. He lived on a chain with a collar around his neck, and he used to escape from that chain quite frequently. So he absolutely terrorized the village. And at one supper evening we had, somebody suggested we got him some girls, which was a jolly good idea because that would keep him occupied rather than visiting too many of the locals. So we purchased 3 or 4 black Welsh mountain ewes, and they produced lambs. And I thought this was lovely. My husband actually thought this was the start of a big sheep farming enterprise. So gradually we moved on to more commercial sheep, and he decided then that the real in thing to be in was Texel sheep. So we went out and purchased at great expense, well, I think it was great expense at the time, our first Texel ewe. And the farmer we bought her from was really good. He let us run the ewe with his ram. So she came to us in lamb. And from then on, we either sent her back to his ram or purchased our own. And the ewe Tulip managed to give us ewe lambs almost every year. So we built up our flock of Texel sheep. And that was really how we started.
And how much you've done since then. It's incredible, isn't it, really? Your first book, If Clouds Were Sheep, is the story of that tale.
And then the second book, Jumping Over Clouds, adds parts of my life, working with horses, doing horse journalism, everything that really got me started into writing.
So book number 3 covers the present day. It's a story about the pattern of the year for a sheep farmer.
That's right. A sheep farmer's year doesn't begin in January. It begins in end of August, beginning of September, although in actual fact, the book starts a little bit earlier than that because we had situations with our son going into farming and his pigs producing piglets. But every time the pigs produce piglets, they seem to end up with us. So we're the maternity department for pigs, along with sheep. Let me just read you a little piece of the introduction to the story. On a summer's morning, I walked to the farm through grass fields and wild flowers and listened to birdsong. On a warm morning, the skylarks are often particularly vocal. Although we originally grew some crops, our land is now all grassland, with countryside stewardship seeding, which benefits both birds and wildlife. Everywhere there was a memory of how our dream began from just a few acres. Initially, I was a horse-mad girl and Aubrey was the son of a farm manager, but neither of us had any money or land, but we did it anyway. As our flock and our savings grew, long before finding Sudgrove, where we farm now, we tried to rent several of the county council farms that came available. I spent hours filling in applications, and we walked around so-called starter farms and dreamed of living and working there. But sadly, we soon found there was no such thing as a starter farm unless you had a very substantial amount in the bank, and preferably a father who could gift you 50 heifers. There was no way a young couple with only a small amount of savings and 20 ewes was ever going to secure such a property, even with the backing of the bank. Now most of the county councils seem to have sold off the majority of their farms, so even those from farming families wishing to branch out on their own with family help are struggling. But now we're here, and farming is a way of life. It can be tiring, emotional, worrying, but there is little we'd change. We're a true team. We argue, we laugh a lot together, but we both work in the same direction. Farming life is sometimes all about leaning on a gate together on a warm summer's evening, taking in the view and admiring our stock, appreciating the hard work was all worthwhile. This past year has been different from most, with COVID still prevalent, and it has brought us other unexpected changes too, mainly through the addition of a young sheepdog, and our son Mark and his wife Kate have just started rearing traditional beef cattle in their fields. Gloucester Old Spot pie train pigs run around the woods. They want to produce top quality pork, bacon and beef to sell locally, and the grandchildren relish this farming life. So all these years after Orb and I first set out to follow our farming dreams, we hope we can help them find their feet.
Lovely. Yes, you seem to have come quite a journey from where you started off. And then now you're at the point where you're supporting your son with his farming journey.
Yes, I think any crisis that we're called in. Well, first two sows that they bought, Spot and Dot, seemed to be just going to live the life of O'Reilly. I mean, they were lounging around in mud baths and they had their own area in the woods, but they weren't doing anything. So eventually we decided, to tell Mark he really ought to put them in pig, because that's the whole idea of it. Didn't all go quite as successfully as we'd hoped. It was only Spot that actually ended up being pregnant. Dot avoided it. And when Spot did farrow, it wasn't dead easy. In fact, it was a day that we'd planned to take the three grandsons rather, to Crocodile World, or World of Crocodiles. And so Mark Toby really wants to join in. He wanted to stay there and help with the pig farrowing, but I felt that probably an escape to Crocodile World was the best thing, because I had to have the vet out, and the vet pointing out you cannot do a cesarean on a pig, which I hadn't realised, but because obviously we're used to in drama situations having to have cesareans done on the sheep. But we ended up with 3 piglets. That also ended up as a bit of a drama, because poor old Spot, having had such a traumatic time and antibiotics and things, didn't milk. So we suddenly had a sow with 3 piglets, no milk. Luckily, piglets will eat from a little tray, so they very rapidly drank milk from that, and then milk with pig nuts squashed up in it. And it wasn't long before we decided that really Spot and Dot would be better back off in their wood department. And we just had these 3 piglets that were never going to be named, because you don't name things you're going to eat. But Bacon, Sausage and Chorizo used to run around the farmyard like mad when the door was opened while we were preparing their meals. Sadly, Bacon and Sausage did actually end up as bacon and sausage, but Chorizo, who was a bright ginger-coloured one, and we all fell in love with, is now one of the stock boars.
Oh, Chorizo is a good name, isn't it?
I was going to say, one of the highlights now is the grandchildren joining in with night lambing. So shall I read you a piece from that? By Easter, the weather is rarely as bitterly cold as it is in February, and with less sheep to lamb, tensions are not quite so high. The fun element actually starts when Grandpa takes the old caravan up to the farm. When the lambing sleepover happens, Wilfred is usually in charge of the goodies box. The chocolate bars are counted regularly, sometimes quality checked by Wilf and Leo if he is joining the team, while Toby has been known to confiscate, saying they're for midnight feast, not mid-afternoon snacks. Orb will then check all is quiet and content, walking along the lambing pens and the sheep shed, his little entourage following, noticing things he might not. Once happy all is well, they return to the house for supper, before returning for the main night shift. The boys and I will watch the cameras, and at the suspicion of someone needing attention, Orb is forced into the nighttime ritual. I usually tidy up, then go to bed. Mine is the early shift, when I often find the night staff all sound asleep in the caravan. If the evening is cold, the first thing Orb will do is switch on the electric heater in the caravan. Then he'll instruct the boys to go quietly along the walk-through feeders where the pregnant ewes can be checked for signs of discomfort or lambing without stressing them. Nothing may be happening, but if it is, Toby will be the first one to notice. If anyone has lamb before they arrive, the lambs will have their navels sprayed with iodine, sometimes very liberally, boys trying to clean stained fingers the following day, and carried around to the pens. Orb makes sure the ewe is following and ensures the gate to the sheep shed is closed securely. There have been times when this has been left to a child, only to find a yard full of ewes wandering around when they return from the penning department. Everyone receives fresh hay and water, and any bottle lambs have their late feed before the boys inform Grandpa it must be time for feasts. Having directed them to thoroughly wash their hands in the milk shed and secured himself a strong cup of coffee, they all creep into the caravan, lit by the tiny wall light that still works. The goodie box is soon dealt with, and Wilfred usually retires to bed, although Toby may still help with the 2:00 check. On my early run, I look round, then check all is well in the caravan. If I need assistance, I will wake Orb, and Toby may stir. Otherwise, I leave them for another couple of hours. The boys will be full of their night adventures, and Orb will just be looking forward to catching up with some sleep in the armchair during the afternoon.
That's amazing. What a wwonderful introduction for them. It's like a childhood dream, isn't it?
Yes, I think he's dreading having most of the time it is just Wilfred and Toby so far. But I think when Leo and Bluebell join in, he's going to have his work cut out.
And the other stars of your book, I suppose the real stars are the sheep. This is the first book where you've been able to dedicate a large part of the narrative to the blue texels, isn't it? Because as I understand it, Aubrey's passion is the white texels, which are the main sort of texel, while yours are the blue texels.
That's right. Well, we bred a blue texel completely by accident. It was sired by a white texel, and his mother was a white texel, and this came out sort of spotted. Which we realise some of the lambs can do now when they're first born. And it merged into being a blue texel, which is, they are blue, like a blue roan horse or blue roan cow. They start dark in the front. I mean, they're on the front of my new book. Very pretty faces with a white sort of halter mark across them. And then they have a dark head, dark shoulders, and then go to a sort of lighter blue across their backs with a dark bit at the back. And not only have we got the blue texels, but this year we suddenly decided we would go into a new sort, which is called a badger face texel, or Dazenkop, which is its proper name. I rang a friend of mine in Northern Ireland, Janet, who we've bought blue texels from, and she's bought from me, and asked her a bit about them. And she said, oh, we've got a sale coming up, an online sale, because with COVID, our livestock sales were coming online. And let me just read you a little bit about the online auctions, because they weren't as straightforward as anybody thought they were going to be. We hadn't really contemplated buying a ewe, but when I looked at what Janet had for sale, she had a lovely one called Apricot, who had 2 lambs with her, Chili, who was a male, and Cherry, a female. Orb was smitten with a gimmer of Janet's, a year-old one that he really liked. She was lovely, but you only have photographs to study, and often I've praised Janet on how excellent her trimmer is and her photographer. She laughed when I told her that, but she said it was a good sheep. I felt she might be far too expensive because these were a new breed coming in and they weren't cheap. The auction was held online over 3 days. The final day was also a day our shearling rams were being sheared at Edgeworth, which was causing a few problems. But my job, I was told, was to sit and watch the auction finish. But after a while, it became a bit like watching paint dry. So I put a large enough bid on Apricot to feel hopeful about securing her, because they wouldn't take my top bid until it worked its way up to that. I was already winning her, but well under my maximum. I'd also put a top bid on the Gimmer for the moment, and I also had the top bid on her, but I thought we might have to go further. We also hoped to acquire 4 doses of semen from the Gimmer's sire. She and Apricot were out of the same ewe, but not identical breeding. So if we won all the lots, we could secure a breeding program. As I say, it was a bit like watching paint dry, and eventually boredom set in, and I wandered off to the kitchen to ponder about lunch. I was still wondering what culinary delight to produce when all got back, when an email pinged through on my phone saying we'd won the Gimmer and the semen. I glanced at the clock. Surely I hadn't been that long. The sale finished at 12, and it had only been 11 when I'd wandered off. I was worried then, as Apricot was 5 lots prior to the Gimmer, so rushed back into the office. My laptop was still showing her page and my lower bid. I flicked back through sale entries. Some had sold, but others were still up, including Apricot. At that point, Janet messaged me from Ireland to say the site had crashed. Nothing indicating this my end, but I shut everything down and waited impatiently for a minute, then opened up the sale again. It still showed me winning Apricot, but I couldn't get to any of the other pages. 11:50 now. I rang the auctioneers, who apologised and assured me they were getting it back up as soon as possible. Then Mark T rang me to say one of the tups they'd started shearing was panting and looking distraught. "Leave it well alone," I think I shouted down the phone. "I can't come down at the moment. I'll find Orb, but don't try to finish shearing it." Orb had just returned from collecting barley. I told him he'd have to deal with the shearers as I was trying to sort out the sale. The site eventually came up again, but only just before the ewe was due to finish. She was still my bid, although £500 more than 5 minutes ago. But I think it had just stuck on her previous price. Thank goodness I'd put on a higher maximum bid. As her lot number went green and said I'd won her, a message pinged to say I'd been outbid on the Gimmer. I raised my bid by £400, but was still outbid and didn't have a chance to put another one on. All things, I considered I was lucky to have not only bought the ewe with her lambs, but also the semen we wanted. So we could use this with Apricot and hopefully start a breeding program. I phoned the auctioneers to tell them what I thought about their sale, to which they were again apologetic. I suppose the learning curve is to make sure my top bid is on any lot I definitely want from the beginning. Hopefully soon sales will be face-to-face again, which makes life an awful lot easier. So we have Apricot, and I will tell you, a badger-faced ewe is dark, almost black, with fawn eyebrows, fawn under the chin, and fawn legs, and they look absolutely beautiful. So I'm delighted that we've got her. She's hopefully in lamb, because I did go off to another sale later in the year to sell some blues at Carlisle. And there was a badger-faced Texel sale there as well. So I went with the instruction, don't you dare buy anything. And I came back with a shearling ram. But he's very nice. He's improved since I've had him, and Orb actually likes him.
So there's a major part of your farming year that we haven't talked about yet, and that is the addition of a sheepdog puppy.
Yes, Jess. We were going to call her Floss, and then we met her and we realised, no, this needs a strong name. Everybody else was having puppies during lockdown, not necessarily sheepdogs, and then they're paying a fortune for them. Some great friends of ours in Dorset suddenly announced that their sheepdog bitch, that is a terrific working dog and sired by their dog, who is also great, had a litter of puppies, and would we like one? And I was busy saying no, while Orb was busy saying yes, which was probably a good thing, because our older sheepdog, Jill, was really just in charge of things, not actually operating by then. So, yes, Jess arrived, and Jess lived in the house to begin with. Terrorised the cat. Gradually, the cat decided that he was either going to pack his suitcase or he'd better sort the dog out. And he decided that home was quite a good place to be, so he'd sort the dog out. And the evenings were quite entertaining, because this puppy, which was all legs, was would be galloping around the sitting room chasing the cat, and then suddenly there'd be a turnaround and it was being chased by the cat. And this didn't just happen at floor level. It could go over us, along the back of the settee, a bit like Wall of Death, really. And the other interesting thing was when I had to get a new rubbish bin. Partly her fault, because I tripped over her and fell on the old plastic one, busting the lid. So this is one of the times, ladies, when you never actually let a man in your life help you with buying something, because Orb decides he'd like one of these posh metal ones that you put a battery in, and as you approached it, it opened its mouth and you could put the rubbish in. I've been quite happy with the plastic one. The metal one wasn't big enough, but anyway, we got it by then. And it was also a great novelty to Jess, because she suddenly realised that if I put something in the bin, if she was quick enough, she could grab it before the lid shut down. And then after a couple of times when she wasn't quite quick enough, she discovered that a wet nose on the bit where the battery operated as well. So she could open it even when I wasn't there and dive in the bin and see what was in there.
She's obviously very clever. And I suppose once she'd mastered that skill, the next step would be to introduce her to the sheep.
Yes, I mean, I taught her the basics. Maisie, my 3-year-old dog, was a great help because she's already trained, and I could say something to her and Jess thought it was quite good to copy it. But her natural instinct with the sheep, I mean, she wants to chase. And provided you can stop them, a dog that wants to chase is great because it's going to do the job. You just have to sort out which sheep you're working them with, and they're ones that can be chased in circles and it's not really going to worry them. And every now and again you stop the dog, and if she goes to the right, then you instruct her to go to the right. If she goes to the left, you instruct her to go to the left, and gradually the commands will come before the movement. But the interesting thing is that we have a handling unit where we deal with all the lambs and things, put them through a foot bath. And there are 3 bays of the handling unit. There's the little paddock first of all, and then a middle paddock, and then the bit, I say paddock, it's a tiny bit, but then the bit where they run through the foot bath. And Jess will run the sheep down there, and while I'm shutting the gate to the first paddock, she's put them through the foot bath. So, you know, it's quite fantastic. And Maisie doesn't like working the sheep in the pens. She's a shyer sort of dog. She's good in an open field, but having them in the pens is something that's really useful. So, yes, she's staying.
I should think she is. What a fabulous addition to your team. And thank you, Sue, for joining me today. It's been an incredible journey through how you got started as a sheep farmer, how you're introducing a new generation to farming, and now new additions to the flock and a new sheepdog puppy. It's been wonderful. To anybody who would like to get a copy of Sheep for All Seasons by Sue Andrews, it's out now and available in ebook and paperback through your usual bookseller. And if you'd like to join us for our next podcast, our next guest will be talking about travelling the Yorkshire Railways in the last days of steam. Thank you very much from me at Crumps Barn Studio.
Thank you so much for coming.
And I hope you'll join us next time.